Yes. Does anybody have any question for me as of now on the previous sessions or last sessions? Anything which I can
No,
help you? I can explain in in detail or something like that.
no.
No problem. Okay, let's go ahead. So last time we had a look at how to basically start building this SOC in terms of secure operations center, or we can call it infosec department, whatever you call it. The label might change whenever we go and start working, right? But overall, just try to understand how we build these things and what are the assets we normally try to take our under our wings in terms of the most critical assets to secure, and these can be including the physical as well as logical security. So the way we plan, we basically start with the physical security, trying to understand the crime rate within the given region, trying to understand how much compound, how much these motion sensor cameras or what type of cameras do we need. How do we have the office security in terms of how the employees or other guests should enter our office, what should be the waiting area, is it outside the restricted zone or something like that. So what we do, we normally build a physical security along our assets, right? Be it digital assets, be it assets like where we are trying to uh, have it secure in place, with locks and key, with even something like what we call firewall or a digital logical software which keep vigilance 24/7, like the cameras you attach on your building, on your compound wall or whatnot, right? Again, even depending upon the strength of the wall, depending upon the strength of the wall, the height of the wall, and everything has to be designed, defined or redefined in a kind of audit terms of a periodic audits which we do have. For logic, for physical security thing, we might have a audit might be 3 months, once in a 3 months. As far as logical security goes, we do have audits for almost weekly basis, and that's a kind of thumb rule. Then we design these to see in terms of what type of entities we are building, we are creating, including something like firewall, software, hardware, infrastructure. How we want to protect ourselves from these online hackers, online entity, thieves, and so on and so forth. And we build these SOC for all these digital assets. So our first step is basically trying to understand the critical asset. Then we plan to build the physical security, then the logical security. Then we design this thing in a terms of the need of the hour, the need of the crime and other things within that area. Then we operate this SOC under our wing in terms of the SOC or infosec team. They lead these management of such scenario, be it a physical audit, be it a logical audit, and in terms of the frequency of it. Again, we have to consider what type of logical security we have to build, how advanced is the user base who are basically going to target our organization, target our data, target our digital entities, and so on and so forth. And then we do review these even SOC operational guidelines also. Should we have more audit, should we have less audit, because all these activity they relate to a financial cost, be it a meeting, be it two meetings. Is it what we need? Could we reduce it? Could we increase it? Again, depending upon the overall management's investments, management understanding of the criticality, and so on and so forth. So there are lots and lots of variables at play here, and we're going to learn it in terms of trying to understand what type of digital assets we secure. To start with, first we have started understanding in terms of communication. So how do you make your communication secure, your communication not to be read by the while traveling, while sharing one communication from another. And that way you normally first start your first logical entity in terms of securing them, be it a communication, be it via spoken, be it via through wires network, and various even social applications as well. So here we are trying to what you can say secure our communication while in transit. How do you do it? You encrypt it. What do you mean encrypt? You normally add some sort of a codes to your communication so that only the other party, the intended party, should be able to decrypt it. So there's a process of encryption and decryption. Be it something like you're talking over the wall, be it something like talking over the phone, the wired phone or mobile phone, or even through the communication between computers like the emails, the chat, and the whole 9 yards of it. So all these things has to be encrypted, then sent, and then decrypt at other end, right? So this way we are basically trying to have the basic intention of securing our first logical entity called communication. And this is what we've seen in last time, right? And then now we're going to understand what is cryptography. Now cryptography is a means by which we do encrypt these things. What do you mean by we encrypt? We encode in a way which only I can do an encoding, and the intended party should have the decoder for the means why I have encoded. The overall history of these cryptography goes in 1800 kind of century, where we try to understand in the Greek the way Greek or Romans, they would try to use Caesar shift cipher. Now cipher is a kind of textual encodation, what we're going to learn today, to start understanding what is the simplest way to encode, what is the most efficient way to decode and encode, and so on and so forth. Okay, the early Roman method of cryptography, popularly known as the Caesar shift cipher, relies on shifting letters of a message by an agreed number. There was a common choice normally between the sender and the receiver. The recipient of this message would then shift the letters back to the same number and obtain the original message. Right here, if you can see the image, we have seen at attack at dawn, and when you add a cipher 2 to this, the message looks like CVVVCEMCVFCYP, and you can clearly understand how this message is really meaningless to the reader, but still whenever it reaches to the intended party and he or she knows, like you have added 2 as a shifted cipher, you can decode it. Does that make sense to you? Could you understand this Caesar shift cipher?
Yes.
This is the
Yes.
easiest way to explain how this encryption and decryption works. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me revise. I got another good video in terms of how this cryptographic introduction works. Okay, give me a minute and have a look at it so that we can so here we are looking for a kind of digital communication to be encrypted at both the end. So the load in terms of how much calculations, how much what you can say number of cycles you required for modern encryption is also a bit lesser in terms of the way our infrastructure have been evolved. Nowadays we might have an octa-core laptop, even an octa-core phone, where we have 8 processors working together in terms of a share load. So one of the processor can be easily used for encryption and decryption at all times. And this is the scenario. Even if you look at WhatsApp, which is a kind of encrypted at both the ends, even if you look at something like Facebook chat, or other chat for that matter, like Instagram and all, these are all encrypted communication. And you might get the message time to time, you have an encrypted, your key has been updated, and that's what the session is all about. The session means the communication start and end, what you normally look for. It's like a session. So you have a session of, let's say, parliament, which is a kind of based on a number of days which are already planned, right? Similarly, the session can be a time bound. Session can be till be attached to the communication in terms of your continuing communication, and so on and so forth. Again, we are just trying to understand the basics of encryption and decryption, so that in case if interviewer asks, so what do you know by encryption, what do you know by decryption, you should be able to tell them. There are a bit of technicalities here because it's evolved over the time, and even the hackers or the communication tappers also evolved over the time. They keep guessing these key, they keep guessing how Ravindra will encrypt. Similarly, it's like the password. Normally Ravindra as a person have a normal regular thought process in terms of how he or she generates its password. You can analyze by yourself the way we generate new password, be it a banking, be it something. Your near and dear one can basically have some hint in terms of how you generate your passwords, and that's fairly normal. But now it's Ravindra's duty, Ravindra's responsibility to make sure whatever you create as a password is secure enough that even your near and dear ones couldn't be guessing it. If they can guess, it's like your password is weaker in terms of your initial thought processes, your initial encryption process, right? So that's why we need to make sure whatever password we give in terms of next cycle, which is a bit different, something like a combination of alphanumeric letter, a special character, then alphanumeric letter with capital and small and a number. These are the normal mix and match of a difficult password. Now, as a person, we might do at the rate of N capital, New, Y capital, York, and 2023. This can be my password. But if the other persons know you normally use a city name as a password, he might try. If you're residing in New York, he might try something like this. You could have a password. So because this satisfies the password rule, but still you are repeating this password for a couple of authentication mechanism, be it like one bank, two bank, or even Paytm or something like that. So here, what we need to do, we need to reinvent this wheel in terms of whenever you give new password, you might start with country name, you might start with continent name, you might start with your car model name, so that next can be Camry hash and 2023. So here what we did, we changed the sequence in terms of our passwords, which will make the guessing person more difficult day by day, or he has to spend at least half an hour or so to understand these type of scenario. And believe me, this really solved the purpose, because even if somebody wants to guess these things, they might try 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. They can't try indefinitely, right? And that's where we won in terms of making our things secure by applying this password. Password is also key. Username is public key. Password is your private key. That's the normal thought process. Then on top of that, we might have something like OTP. OTP is one-time password which is shared with you by some other medium. So even if your username password is hacked, your OTP might not. And that's a kind of last line of defense we do use in terms of banking, right? And this is how we are trying to make our communication secure day by day. This is how the modern cryptography works. So modern cryptography requires parties interested in secure communication to possess a secret key only. So normally you shouldn't share your password with anybody. And in case you have, then please do change it. And that's what the overall thought process for all critical digital asset sharing. In today's world, we might have a digital currency, which can be just secured by one password. And this is the actual scenario. That's why in terms of those cryptographic methods, in terms of those bitcoins and all those things, we have to walk to an extra step to make sure we secure our digital currency. And that's how we have to understand how this cryptography is important in our day-to-day life. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions so far?
No. Thank you.
Whatever you couldn't understand, don't worry, you don't have to explain cryptography in detail. I've shared these thought processes with you to understand how these things are getting done in today's world. If you want to have extra details, we can have an extra session in terms of how do you encrypt and decrypt also, because encryption process normally get selected depending upon the criticality, and we'll have a look at some examples I think in the next slide. Let's try to understand some definition here where we'll be ready to answer these things. Okay, let's try. What is cryptography? Cryptography is an art and science of making crypto stream that is capable of providing information security, or rather communication security. Encryption also used on the storage data as well. So whatever data is stored on your computer is normally encrypted. To give you the example, If you download something on Netflix, you might not be able to see that on your hard drive or anywhere. How they do it? They encrypt this thing. Even they break those video stream into separate files. And whenever you load or try to load it from some other software, you might not be able to see that file name, and so on and so forth. So for that, you have to have the keys which are embedded in the Netflix software, which is downloaded, installed on your device. And this is how even Netflix works. This is how they secure their files. So whatever you downloaded as in video files, which is not shareable, and that's how they build their what you can say revenue model, and that's how they've really been successful. Netflix is one of the most prominent company to be doing a great new invention or using new invention with the help of all the greatest modern technology, and that's why they are successful. Cryptography deals with the actual securing of digital data. How do you secure? Either you make it hidden so that nobody knows the data is there, or you make it encrypted so that even if the data is there, nobody can see it or nobody can use it. It refers to the design of mechanism based on a mathematical algorithms and provide fundamental information security services. Now, algorithm, the word looks really good, but at the end of the day, if you search what is algorithm, these are the set of rules. That's how we have to understand. So when I say algorithm, you might try to say set of rules. So here, cryptography deals with the actual securing of digital data. It refers to the design of mechanism based on the mathematical rules that provide fundamental information security services. You can think of cryptography as the establishment of a large toolkit containing different techniques in a security application. So here we are talking about application-based security. So you have an application at your end which encrypt these things. At other end, you have a similar application which can be decrypting those things. Okay. Now there are additional thing I want to share with you in terms of timestamp. I hope some of you might know this, what is a timestamp, but yeah, let's try to understand. This is a really important stuff. Okay, to understand this timestamp scenario. Let me share my. Could you see Microsoft Word in a dark theme?
Yes.
Okay, now let's try to understand time STAMP. Now, timestamp is a way to share time in at the level of nanoseconds by these digital means. Okay, let's consider time today is 15th April 2023. Then I add hours to this. Okay, hours is right now over here is 7:31. I don't say AM, so 7 is basically 07. Then I have seconds. Let's say in terms of 3 digit, I have seconds like, let's say 333. Then I have a nanoseconds like 1 2 3 4. Okay, now this is what I can say a timestamp is. So here I have a date in terms of DD, MM, YYY. Then I have a time in MM, HH, MM. Then I have seconds, SSSS, 3S, and then I have a nanosecond. You can say N. This makes my timestamp in terms of number of letters, right? And this can be altered in terms of somewhere this can be 4 digit, this can be 3 digit. That's why the timestamp is operating system dependent. So if you are using Android version 11, this is the timestamp I'm talking about. When you're using Windows 10, this is the timestamp I'm talking about. In Windows 11, they have inserted this as a timestamp. So whenever I use this timestamp as a key, and believe me, maximum timestamp is a key with the help of some additional thing like this is kind of timestamp at the session start. And normally I have a variable of a duration of a session, let's say 200 minutes, or in a banking 300 seconds or something like that. So this way I make a combination of these two key which is known. So if I'm working with Bank of America and I have a timestamp plus 300 as a duration of a second, I can have this key transferred as a encryption key. Forget about the primary or asymmetric and non-symmetric. So this way, this is my ciphertext I'm talking about. If interviewer asks, tell me a way how will you encrypt? And believe me, you can explain like this. Okay, there is no space in between because space is also another ASCII character with the okay, and how these numbers are calculated for the letters or anything, I can go to a site. Let me take you to the browser where you can understand how these encryption can be based on ASCII character. So what is ASCII? ASCII. Okay, and I'll enter here ASCII table. So this is my ASCII table I'm talking about. Let me open this thing in an image where I might be able to share you. Okay, this is a ASCII chart. It's a standard extended ASCII chart and codes as of now. Could you see 0 is null? So null means 0 either way. 1 is start of the heading and this way. These are the HTML ASCII chart. When it's come to A is a line feed 10, not this a smaller A. Yeah, A is 61 here. Now, these are hex to decimal code conversion. I'm looking for ASCII table. Yeah, this is the ASCII table. So if you use your keyboard, you press Alt key and this thing. Let me show you. If I share you this notepad, this is my text editor, right? And here, if I press Alt key and type, 65 and release Alt key. Okay, it's not working. They have disabled this thing, I believe. Okay, I need to check security key. So 65 is equal to capital A, 66 equal to capital B. These are the standard ASCII character. Why? How do I know that? Because I was working in the assembly level programming, that's why. And these are the hex decoding of these or hex replacement of these ASCII characters. These characters are normally used by your keyboard as communicating with your computer, because keyboard also have a sort of computer which encodes these things whenever it transfer a key to the main processor. Keyboard itself is a mini computer, if you know what I'm trying to tell me. Why I'm basically going into this technicality? Because we need to understand the communication here, where we keep transferring or keep building these keys on fly, and this is one of the most common way to have timestamp as a key with the addition of certain other number. Might be the length of a session, might be the zip code or something like that. Do you get an idea of the most common cryptographic thought processes? Hello, anybody have any difficulty in understanding? Can you hear me?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, good, right? No problem, no problem. Okay. And believe me, we don't have to go to this technicality. I just want to make sure whatever you say as an answer to a question, what is cryptography? You have to build this script or you have to build this answer so that you should be able to tell the interviewer what is cryptography. As simple as that. Okay, so I've shared some background with you. We don't want to go and try to build some cryptographic model for our communication, but some say might be double key encryption, single key encryption. So you should be know how this double key means two key, single key or triple key works in the real life. So you have one number, you have another number, you have another number. So it's a three-level encryption, or you're encrypting the same thing thrice, so that if anybody knows the two key, without third key, he or she got stuck. So your communication is never decrypted. Believe me, the triple desk encryption which is used in banking have been broken for just 2 times, and that too after lots and lots of efforts of so many months. That's why all these credit card banking system, they use triple desk encryption. So you have three different number, three different encryption keys used to encrypt a single message, a single communication. The art and science of breaking the ciphertext is known as cryptanalysis. So cryptanalysis is basically a process of decrypting. Cryptanalysis is a sister branch of cryptography. They both coexist because when you encode, there is a need of decoding as well, right? The cryptographic process result in the ciphertext for transmission or storage. Cryptography concerns with the design of crypto system, while the cryptanalysis studies the breaking of crypto system, or rather than breaking, let's say encoding and decoding. I believe you can use this word, right? Encrypting and decrypting, or encoding and decoding, rather than building and breaking kind of scenario. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions so far?
No.
Great.
Good.
We just spend some time on cryptography till we understand the cryptography in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of how do we secure our data, how do we secure our communication. Okay, now let's try to throw some light on where we use this cryptography. So there are some good agencies who provide services for cryptography. They are specified in this matter, and these are well-known companies, and there are specific certification like PCI, personal computer interchange. This certification is basically one of the most crucial certifications to get from an organization to make sure your communication is at the par with the modern technology. So you have to get PCI certified every year if you are dealing in credit card, online banking, cryptography. Well, cryptography or these Bitcoin guys, they are really I don't know why, but they are not really PCI compliant. That why quite a few countries even not given recognition to these cryptocurrencies or Bitcoins or something like that. Again, that technology is still not stable. If you ask me, it's not secure enough, and that's why we have lots and lots of theft, lots and lots of ups and down on a particular cryptocurrency. You might have heard in last months, one of the guy got jailed, got prosecuted for sharing this key with his friends or something like that sort, and that's how he was penalized in billions of dollars. The I think the implementation still in a progress. So there were around, I think 20,000 odd these users of those currencies got in the limbo. They lost quite a good amount of money with this type of cryptocurrency. So again, whenever you try to do these digital currency purchasing, please make sure you know what you are doing. Okay, so that's just a suggestion. Okay, okay, so first of all, we use cryptocurrency to maintain our data integrity. It is a security service that deals with identifying any alternation of data, and this is what we normally call as a checksum. So whenever you copy a file from one computer to another, even from your smartphone to a computer, there's a service called checksum which is given by the operating system, which makes sure if a file of 32K transferred from one smart system to another smart system, they share these data in terms of what the size of file, and at the end the other OS where the file has been copied or destined, that operating system will also check if the file or the checksum matches in this in the amount of total size of the file. The other operating system will validate, and these type of what I can say checksum built into the operating system whenever you're transferring the data. Here we are talking about some sort of a maintaining the integrity of data or the completeness of communication. And these type of checksums, as they normally refer to, are very a kind of base of our encryption and decryption, where we normally share what size of file is being transferred, what size of communication is being handed over from one router to another, one receiver or one sender to another, and so on and so forth. The data may be get modified by an unauthorized entity intentionally or accidentally during transit. For that matter, we have these checksum checks built into the communication mechanism. So integrity services confirms that whatever data or whether the data is intact or not. If it's not intact, we'll restart the communication. And that's the normal thought process. But in today's modern world, when we are using IoT, Internet of Things 4, HTML5, and so on and so forth, here we build some additional checks in terms of disintegrating a big file into smaller chunks. Like a 5 gig video might come to you in terms of number of small packets of, let's say, 25k, 35k, or something like that, depending upon the communication handshake. This communication handshake is an added process on top of the other communication mechanism if you are using computers at both the end. And that's how whenever you use let's say big video files via computer, it's really acts fine. But if you use big video files via smartphone, sometimes it do add some flickers, because we have some extra mechanism in terms of the way these data packet transmitted between a high-end system and a low-end system. Of course, nowadays even smartphones are a high-end system. Means the processor which we are using are really great processor. Be it the latest Apple iPhone 13, we are using octa-core processor. So we have 8 core processor within that smartphone, so small smartphone. When I started my career in 1994, each processor has to embed on the motherboard or the main board separately. Now we just have one chip with all the 8 processor inbuilt into it, which is much smaller than the processor which we were using in those good old days, and so on and so forth. So here, due to modernization of technology, we have this facility embedded into our communication. So integrity service confirms that whether the data is intact or not since it was last created, transmitted, or stored by an authorized user. Now we have even authorization and authentication services added with encryption, and on top of that we have something called OTP. OTP is like one-time passwords, and this got added near about 8 to 10 years ago, where we have another channel of communication, not the one which we are communicating for transmitting key as well. So even if you have really great decrypting machines tapping your communication, without that OTP, the communication can't be decrypted completely. So the whatever data is tapped by the wires from the thief or a hackers might not be the complete in itself till you get that key in terms of the OTP. You couldn't able to decrypt that thing, and that's why we were able to do all the great communications like these in our modern communication day. Data integrity cannot prevent the alteration of data, but provides a means of detecting whether the data has been manipulated in an unauthorized manner. So somebody, if try to tap your data, even the computer tells the communication lines are not reliable, because there's a signal levels now which are also get transmitted via communication. I don't want to go to too much technicality, so I'll stop here. But you should understand the data integrity in terms of how do we cope up with this, secure data transfer, or integrate, data integration, how it's achieved in a typical data communication. Then we have authentication, because now we are talking about an authorized user to be able to consume certain services, and only he or she should be able to, not anybody else. So authentication provides an identification of an originator. It confirms to the receiver of the data received has been sent only by an identified and verified sender. Nowadays, whatever you create as a digital content, your key goes with that. Believe me, when you take a picture on your smartphone, the smartphone already stores this timestamp, location key, and the user who is logged into that service. So your fingerprint might go with that. Or normally your phone have some sort of a identification on this internet, which can be IP address or a MAC address, and we'll study these things in depth, what is MAC address, what is IP address, in couple of slides later. But all these things go with the single image, and that's why if you have a really, what you can say, high quality images, all these entities go without your knowledge, and that's what we built into it. Believe me, within North America, there are at least 300 all critical crimes solved due to these key embedded in the photo, embedded in the video, and that's how they were able to, guide to an exact location. Now, how this location service works is also another good thing to learn. This is called Global Positioning of Data, GPS, Global Positioning Systems, which is a mesh of satellite hovering over the earth. They normally can track your location up to 2 millimeters in North America, 3 centimeters in Canada, around 5 centimeters in India. So your location can be pinpointed to such sharpness, and these are used by mostly these governmental agencies to use the maximum co-locations in terms of an even entity. So believe me, when you talk about a digital asset like an image, video, or even something like your smartphone can be traced to that last centimeter in most of the countries. I'm not talking about the really, what you can say, less blessed countries, but overall, means I'm talking about North America, Canada, India, or most of the Europe. They also on either around 5 centimeters at a GPS coordinate locations. And believe me, these are real life scenario I'm talking about. So whenever you want to authenticate somebody, you can validate all these things with a single request communication and receival of data. That's how modern the overall communication or authentication services have become. Does that make sense? Does this pique your interest in knowing how these things are working today? And how we can use these services to secure our assets? Uh, could you able to understand what I'm trying to say here?
Yes.
I know it's a bit of more technicality, but please bear with me for a couple of slides so that we can actually understand how this communication works. Okay. Now I'll share
Ravi
the.
sir, I would like to add something to
Please,
what you
please,
have
sorry.
explained.
Please go ahead,
Yeah.
sir. Sorry.
Yeah. So, guys, the thing is, to summarize whatever so far Ravi sir has explained, cybersecurity basically works on three triads. So there are three pillars of cybersecurity that is called CIA. C for confidentiality, I for integrity, and A for availability. So right now, whatever we have seen in terms of encryption and the authentication, the data integrity, that basically covers your confidentiality part. So the communication or the data that is being exchanged, or the communication that is being happen between two parties or two entities, that should be simply secured, confidential, and it should be accessible to only to those intended party. No other third person who has any interest in that data, who doesn't have any interest in that data, should not have access to the said communication. That is what we cover in confidentiality. The later part would be covered in terms of integrity. So, as a sender, if I have sent some of any of the message, the message should be received to the recipient or the receiver in the same format, in same context. It shouldn't be like this, that I have mentioned or I have given a suggestion of on some other points, say um, uh, uh, Miami Beach, and when it reached to the destination, it transferred into some other beach or some other word. So then the integrity of the data is being lost. So to maintain the integrity of the data, we have a confidentiality layer onto it, so that it shouldn't be accessible. Integrity can be compromised or achieved by the hackers when they try to sniff your data between the communication. So just say, consider for an example, there is a water pipe between two end from A to B. Water which is being received from A to B in that same pipe, it is confidential. But if in middle of that transmission or that journey, if there is a cut in that water pipe, the data can be lost or the water can be lost. So then there is a loss of integrity, and similarly the availability as well. So data should be accessible to the intended party as and when they request to have an access to it. it shouldn't be so. That's for the entity perspective, or where whatever is the data that is being shared, stored, or received, it is ensured that it should be available to the recipient when they request to have it. So these are the three main pillars of cybersecurity: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Whatever we have learned so far, and we will be learning in coming sessions, that would be around these three pillars only. CIA. Any questions so far on this?
No, got it clear. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let me move ahead. Now here, we are trying to understand how these, as Anuj sir have said, how these three services to be included in the overall securing a given entity. Let's talk about authentication a bit, where we talk about message authentication, entity authentication, and non-repetition. These are the three main clauses when it comes to authentication services, right? So message authentication identifies the original of the message without any regard to the router or the system has sent the message. So if your message, let's say if you're transmitting a message from Mumbai to St. Louis, the message can go via it's like the flight system, right? If you travel internationally, the flight might go through Amsterdam or Heathrow, or there are a number of mid options or hopping stations. Even nowadays there are direct flights. Like that same way, the message transmission can be with any path, via router, via any systems, but overall the message should be integrated, message should be kept intact, like just explained by Anu sir. It should be concise in itself, so that if it's get damaged, then we'll scrap that message and we'll have another message sent to you. And like that, the overall message authentication works on the ground. The entity authentication, it's assurance that the data has been received from a specific entity, say a particular website. So here we are trying to understand who is the originator, and we record that details as well. Apart from the originator, the authentication may also provide assurance about the parameters related to data, such as the date and time of creation and transmission. And this is what the timestamp is all about. Normally, the timestamp is a really, really important key which is normally used in cybersecurity over the globe. Does it means the hackers should be able to decrypt the timestamp? Yes, they could. But believe me, if you don't know the originator, if you don't know the operating system of the originator and the configuration of the originator, it's really difficult to decrypt timestamp. There are around, I think, 30 plus variant of a timestamp depending upon the even DDMMYY, MMDDYY, and so on and so forth. So there are certain difference of timestamp, but even if you look at the combination thereof, it's really difficult to decrypt even the single key to start with. Okay, and again, these are all encryption and decryption thought processes which we have included in our building a bit more in sturdy encryption methodology, more sturdy decryption processes, so that the communication is efficient and which is normally non breakable or something like that sort. And that's why nowadays the communications are really, really advanced. That's why there are less number of hacking happens on day-to-day basis. If you consider the modernization of the overall communication or entity authentication processes. No repetition. Now this is a really latest evolved thought processes when it comes to authentication service. Let's say you're purchasing something from Amazon, and then you go to the Amazon, say, okay, now I have not purchased that thing. Amazon is forcing that entity on me. For such scenario, we normally build an artifact into our communication called non-repetition artifacts. These artifacts can test your computer, smartphone to the nth level, as I just discussed you, with the GPS, with your phone's original MAC address. We're going to learn the MAC address. MAC address is basically a MAC key normally given to any smart devices whenever it get formatted, it get initialized. So when your smartphone gets formatted, it allotted a MAC address, which is a combination of your processors, your memory, your storage, and the make of that smart device. So normally these combination gives you a MAC address, which is a 32-bit address in the hex. So it's non-readable most of the time. The MAC address, if you try to see these MAC, and the IMEI key what you talk about is an extension of MAC address. IMEI key on your mobile phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an extension of a MAC address. So when you format your phone, your IMEI key might change, or your phone might need to get registered with the service provider so that they can share a part of your IMEI key, and that key got updated. And that's how these normally MAC addresses are formed. So whenever you say I want to purchase certain things, even the MAC address gets shared with the what you can say, the retailer, or vice versa. And that key is basically very crucial to your smartphone, to your laptop, desktop, all these smart devices. So whenever you say I've built a copy of that smartphone, it means they've tried to do a copy of that phone, which is not easy. You need to have a person in your mobile service providers infrastructure department to also initiate or replicate that key for the second device now, which is almost impossible in today's world. And that's how these non-repetition clause work even in most of the international national judiciary systems. It's a property that most desirable in a situation where there are chances of a dispute over exchange of data, specifically purchase or dealing in financial matters. For example, once an order is placed electronically, a purchaser cannot deny the purchase order if the non-repetition service was enabled in this transaction. And now in today's smartphone, all these services are already enabled. So whenever you purchase something on Amazon for your smartphone, the MAC address, the timestamp, and all these type of details get shared over, and that constitutes a complete foolproof judiciary retraceable order. Believe me, that's how we are working in today's model world, and that's how these bitcoins, or that's how these digital currencies are based on. But again, like that repetition clause, or right, that duplicacy, what we normally call I'm cloning a phone kind of scenario, there are some chances in digital currencies as well. Like you might clone a currency because it's intangible, right? You can't touch, you can't feel, so you can't tell the shape, odor, or the color or whatnot. So to replicate an intangible thing is really a challenging scenario, but can be done. And that's how these currency markets are very in terms of their stability for implementing this currency all across the globe. So that's how this repetition clause work. There are around three interviews in last year where they've asked this thing. So what do you mean by non-repetition clauses? Or how does a person cannot deny an order placed and something like that. So please, this is far and few, but these questions are related to the encryption and decryption thought processes, where we need to understand how these things work on the ground. So even if you place an order or connection got disconnected, you might get a message from Amazon, hey, the payment is not gone through. Could you please try in the next 3 or 5 minutes? And that's how they can hold your session key. So once you log in again within next 3 or 5 minutes, you can be able to process the same order, or otherwise that order get cancelled. You'll not get penalized because of the network disconnection or something like that. But if you keep doing this thing again and again, the Amazon might not let you to process your order from that device or from that communication methods. And this is how these clauses works. Okay, anybody have any question as of now?
No.
Let me move ahead. Now I have these types of encryption. Again, these are a kind of stepping into the actual technicality. How do you do the encryption? But just remember the types of encryption. There are 4 types of encryption thought processes or cryptography functions, cryptography primitives as they normally call it. These are normally ciphertext encryption, hash encryption, message authentication, and digital signatures. Okay, you might have we discussed cybertext at length. Then hash function is basically using cybertext with hexadecimal numbers. So these are binary encryptions. Then we have message authentication code, which talks about residential keys to the smart devices like the Mac key, or like the OS identification number. Whenever you purchase an operating system, be it a Windows, Macintosh, Android, they normally give you a authentication user key, where you normally install key as an original operating system on your device, and that generates a key which get registered with the vendor. So for all your smartphones, whenever we create smartphone, the first step is basically authenticating the operating systems. After building MAC address, they normally share the authentication key of your operating system, which is also a unique key for a unique device. Now this key is also kind of used as a resident key. These are called resident key because unless and until you reinitialize your device to its core, these keys may carry forward, like formatting the phone completely, formatting a laptop completely. After formatting your laptop or phone, you need to reinstall the operating system and so on and so forth. So all these resident key, as they normally referred, can be used as for the method authentication as the keys. Then we have a digital signature. Can anybody have anybody gone through something like digital certificates? Have you heard of digital certificates? Anybody?
Yeah,
You
I
heard of
think I
them?
have. Yes.
Okay. Digital
Yeah.
certificates are normally given to the website or the public systems where we authenticate the.
Verify a website, right?
Yes, normally a website or a particular user for that matters. Means if you
Oh,
file your, returns, right, with either HR block or something, you normally have your own digital certificate to identify yourself in terms of I give in all my details like my name, number, address, zip code, phone number, all these things combined together can be, termed as a your identity or your digital identity, and that's how this digital signature are required, and they are collected from various sources. Normally in North America there are enactment for digital certificates building in terms of for a given region. You might have digital certificate with first name, last name, zip code, then city name, then the postal address, then the time you move on or something like that. Again, depending on these mix and match of data entities, you normally create a digital signature, but for every region there's a uniformity in digital signature with a minor change. Like throughout India, we have around 8 to 12 ways how we build this digital signature within India, which is used for all the governmental transactions. So if Ravindra Pandey want to process a new application with a governmental agency, they might basically either build my new digital signature or request me to give my digital signature. And digital signature are not signature when you take a pen and paper, sign and take a photo and give it to these guys. No, those are not digital signature. Okay, digital signature are created digitally. So there are these four different way of using different types of key to build, encrypt and decrypt. Okay, I'll not basically go into the symmetric and asymmetric key here. Symmetric, as we know, it's a symmetric key in terms of it's symmetric for encoder as well as decoder. In terms of asymmetric key, there are difference in keys at the both end. Okay, so I'll stop at there. Let's not go into there because I haven't seen any interview till date who normally works or asks symmetric key or asymmetric key and those things. Okay, we'll understand the public key and different keys in a minute. Okay, now there are these cryptographic primitives in terms of their complexity and how they embed these services of encryption. Let's not go here because there are hardly any detail asked in the interview. I'll share this presentation with you today so that you can go through these different ways and means. If you want any details, do let me know. But right now what we are more concerned, what we are more enabled towards is clearing the interview. So whatever have not been asked in the interview, let's not go there unnecessarily. It's a kind of waste of time. Well, knowing is good, but we can know these things at our leisure rather than at this fast-paced learning. Are you with me? Or anybody want to kind of disagree with me? And that's fine also. Do you want me to start working on these services versus keys and all? We are good, right? Okay, let me move it, no problem. Now, symmetric cryptography, just to explain these things, where the same keys are used for encrypting and decrypting, known as symmetric key. The study of symmetric crypto system referred as symmetric cryptography, and symmetric cryptography also sometimes referred to as a secret key cryptographic systems. A few well-known example of symmetric keys are digital encryption standard DES, triple desk, which is used by banking, banking, credit card services all over the globe, is what we call triple desk system. Triple DES, triple desk or three desk. And there's an idea and there's a blowfish. Blowfish is one of the most oldest cryptography, invented, which is still in use, but mostly all the banking and financial use triple desk. So it's they encrypt three times, and they use this digital encryption standard of a 32-bit key to encrypt the same thing thrice. I think let's leave it at that rather than going into the detail. Okay, then I have some pictorial workflows. How do you do symmetric cryptography, and how do you do the asymmetric cryptography? Even I am trying to enter the formulas as well. Okay, I'll not basically spend too much time on this because these are more technicality. If anybody wants, do let me know. I'll share these things with you, how these things happen on the real ground. Okay, I'm going to share this presentation with you anyway, so that you will have these slides. If you can go through them, well and good, and we can basically keep studying more and more. Does that make sense? Or anybody wants to go to these things right now? Hello, can I get your consent or dissent, whatever it may be?
Yeah, are we going to be using
We're
this in
good. We're good.
No, no, sir. No, ma'am. We don't
Okay, so
this thing. We are not a programmer.
yeah,
And
that's what.
these are specific guys who are basically PhD in mathematics and all those things. They do these kind of thing, designing of key, deciding if you use a symmetric or a symmetric key. Again, asymmetrics are far and few. Symmetrics are mostly used. As I told you, like mostly in a financial institution, we use triple DES or a 3DES. Okay, so that's let's keep it at that. If somebody asks, what do you know about that? I know it's encrypted thrice, as the name says, and it's a digital encryption key. So that's how we got it designed for quite a few years, and which is quite sturdy. There are hardly any instances of breaking a triple desk key. And if you want, I can share the way how this triple key desk key has been made. You can even go to the YouTube. There are a good number of videos available how you build a triple desk key. There is a specific key generated device which is invented by far and few companies, which is used to decrypt this key. And then you have these all strictly chosen public keys, encryption with them. So even if you break those two, the third is almost impossible. Okay, so if you want, do let me know. I'll be happy to share those things with you, but these are like going into the technicality of it, to the level of either you should know the mathematics, statistics, and probability, and then you can basically understand how these key are encrypted and decrypted. And that's knowing of it. Building a key is another step for that. Okay, because these are all digitally enhanced communication we are talking about. Okay, let's move on to our next capsule, building the actual SOC. Now, how SOC in today's modern world look? This is how the overall symbol of a small IT company. So here we have an internet, which is a kind of basic networks we use for all our communication. Then we have a broader router. Then we have a firewall. And this firewall is normally have a web content filter. What is a web content filter? every organizations have these filters where there are some sites allowed by the employees, some sites are not allowed by employees. So they filter this traffic. So if you put a request for something like playboy.com, which might get blocked by this firewall saying, hey, Ravindra, you're not supposed to access this thing. If you type this by mistake, please, don't use this website, which is not, useful for our day-to-day work, something like that. If you keep doing it, many times, there might be a memo from your, HR to you saying, hey, why you're, using this using this, not allowed website, and so on and so forth. Then we have these routers. These are packet routing system or interchange packet systems. And here we exchange this packet from the basic organizational switch, which is also a computer, which basically switches your packet to the router after, validating your authorization and authentication that you have access to the net. So whenever you normally join an organization, they normally create your this firewall profile or web content filter profile, where you have some allowance in terms of your label within the organization, so that you can use this site, you can't use this site, and so on and so forth. It's like quite a few developer level entries. You couldn't use that news sites. You can't watch CNN, BBC, or something like that, even the newspaper site. But if you really go on a higher level, you might be allowed to watch those news sites, and so on and so forth. Again, depending upon every company's policies and rules, they build these filters, they build these restrictions on their employee. And nowadays we have good number of even guests coming to our organizations, but they couldn't use this internet basically. But if the guest or the employee from other offices staying with is working with you for a couple of months or so, they might give a guest network access, which are basically a very restrictive, like the entry level employee. And again, the tablets and the phone, how do you use these things? There are also restrictions in terms of using these devices for your day-to-day usage, in terms of either you let your laptop host to your mobile network so that you can view all those sites and blah 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 thing. Is it should be allowed or not? In many organizations, they have already started implementing these jammers. Specifically, you can't use mobile phone and something like that. So again, these restrictions are basically getting implemented on definite policy and procedures of these top managements. Then again, there are some devices which you can use like printer, voice phones, or the host security employee laptops, where we have all these security measures enabled. You might have a kind of screen capture mechanism as well. Quite a few organizations in today's North American or Canadian IT space, they normally take a snapshot of your screen every once in a minute or once in a 3-minute kind of scenario, just to understand what you're doing in terms of are you using anything which is not to be used within your organizations or something like that. So then we have a quarantine network, where we normally keep these users away from our networks. Even if they are working on our network, they are kind of isolated. And these are what you can say labeled malicious users, rogue device, which is basically kind of harmful to your network, or a non-compliant device. He or she might be an employee, but he or she done quite a few wrong things. So that device is basically labeled as a non-compliant device. And every organizations have their way and mean of forming a label of nominating such scenarios. Like after 6 or 7 repetitive requests to a non-allowed website can be a non-compliant user or something like that. And normally the most secure way, which most secure entity kept on a separate network or an island of network within your organizations, called data center or SOC tools. This is where we normally work. So we have SOC and PCI. PCI is basically the compliant, and there are some non-compliant or which are in a process of compliance. So there are 3 parts of these highly secure networks. SOC normally will have access to almost all the sites, but still they are strictly monitored for every request they send or every request come to them, vice versa. So all these scenarios are monitored religiously. Then non-PCI compliant, these are mostly the financial transactions or very crucial entities which we are normally categorized in PCI or non-PCI. PCI is personal card, personal card interface. This is one of the most important secure security certifying authority, and this is all across the globe. So even if you're working in Canada or US, it's the same authority who certifies your financial transaction like they are secure. They check the key length, they check the key building machines, they check the encryption methodologies. And believe me, to be a PCI certification auditor takes almost 6 years to be an auditor. I am one of the PCI certified auditor, so that I can make sure your financial communication is secure enough for any and every user or not. Normally in India, we have 6 months of leniency period. So if you start your shop today, you have 6 months to actually comply with PCI. And during that time, the liability of any financial losses is on your shoulder for any users, which is not a good thing, believe me. And that's how these PCI certifications are supported by many government, state or federal organization. Okay, so these are overall understanding of SOC as a department. Anuj sir, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah. Uh, as Ravindra sir explained, PCI is yes, it is one of the standards that needs to be compliant in terms of certain parameters that needs to be configured or enabled in the system. And, it is basically restores reviews and suggests your secures your payment card industry, that is called PCI. So whenever there is a transaction that is being happening, the financial transaction, so your personal information, as in your key indicators, that is something which is being secured and encrypted onto it. And yeah, and as you can see, the SOC as in team or a SOC organization or a SOC entity. So it basically covers your entire operations and the logistics when it comes to securing your SOC environment. Yeah.
Now, this is the site pcistg.com, where we normally can understand what is PCI, what are the compliance workshop, the conference and everything. It talks about the PCI introduction as well. So you have the specification. Right now we are at version 7. You can be compliant with version 6 also. And there are various resources also available. Please go through this thing if you want to know more about PCI. As we've discussed, is specifically for payment industry. So all banking, financial or non-financial institutions normally has to get certified with PCI certificate. And there are various levels of certificate in terms of documentation certificates, in terms of physical security, in terms of encryption level certificates, and so on and so forth. So it's a process, and you need to get validate these certificates on yearly basis. Okay. Let me come back to my presentation. And now here we will start understanding what is IP address, the network basis, what is MAC address, what is a router, and so on and so forth. So here basically we are embarking on the technology details, and then we'll move on to the tool set which we use for cyber or securing our entities purpose. Okay. Does anybody have any question as of now?
No.
Anything which you want to ask in terms of details, or I should or we should basically take it in our next session before embarking on technical terminologies for cybersecurity. Let's do one thing. Let's stop here today. Please go through these things, and throughout the week, please have a look at all those other sessions we have completed. If you have anything, please do ask, so that we can go over those things. Because now here forth we need to learn around, I think, 15-20 odd technical terminologies like router, firewall, software, hardware, packet routing, IP address, MAC address, and so on and so forth. And thereafter we normally move on to the tools sections, where we normally have access authentication tools, then we have penetration testing tools, then we have vigilance tools, and so on and so forth. So this is how the overall sessions are planned. So please take a take a minute or two to revise what we've learned till date, so that these are all basics we have covered till date. Now we are going into the technicality in terms of actually building up a thought process, learning this terminology one step at a time. So do anybody have any questions as of now for me or Anuj sir? Okay, I'll take it as a no. So let's stop here, and then in the next session we'll start understanding this terminology. What is IP address? Why we need this IP address thing? How we make the IP address are really useful, and the different version and implementation of it. Okay, so let's stop here, and let's meet again on let's say Friday. If in between we might basically try to have 3 sessions a week, mostly from the next to next week. Let me sort out the logistic again, and I'll come back to you on that. Okay,
Good.
thank you, thanks a lot, have a great
Thank
weekend.
you.
Bye bye.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Bye.